Welcome back to Thursday night on the PPR channel. You are tuning in for Southern Discomfort, and I am your host, the paranormal pastor, Ezekiel Kincaid, and by my side is my beautiful fiance, Bethany. How are you tonight, baby?
I'm good. You know, the picture of you at the beginning,
Yeah.
it looks like somebody photoshopped your face onto someone else's body.
I don't know. Maybe
It's the way you're standing. It's just the way you're standing.
Maybe they did. But we did my intro.
No.
So now it is time for your intro music. Are you ready?
No.
Are you ready? Here we go. Welcome to the show, Blondie.
Gee, thanks. I hate that stupid Pentium processor, music.
I think
it's awful. You had to pick the worst sounding thing.
Let me find the one that's just the trumpets. Hold on. I think it's on one of the other ones. We got the one with the trumpets somewhere. I'll do that one for next time.
Trumpet you.
You got
At least the fart sounds are funny. At least that one's funny.
It is funny. They're all funny. They're all funny.
Uh-huh.
Hey, PW, welcome to the chat. Thank you for being there with us. PW.
Hello, PW.
No, Dustin will probably be in here a little bit, so we're going to just wait till some more people get in chat. But we are continuing our series tonight on the Satanic Panic. So,
are there any trigger warnings?
Not tonight. Hey, Bud Files, welcome to the chat. Not tonight. Next week. So here's kind of the schedule for what we've got coming up until Halloween on Southern Discomfort. So tonight we are looking at the Satanic Panic and how it went after heavy metal music. Next week we are going to do our last show on the Satanic Panic and talk about how it went after horror movies. And we're going to talk about the video nasties. And if you're not familiar with the video nasties, it is a list of 72 movies that were compiled by people in the United Kingdom to be boycotted. And a good bit of those movies went to trial and were prosecuted and were banned. And still today, some of these movies have not received a release in the UK or Australia. So next week, when we talk about the video nasties, there's going to be plenty of trigger warnings on that. Hey, Mayhem and Miracles, welcome. Thank you for popping in and saying hello. And then on the 19th, we are going to have another special show with some special guests. I've advertised it here on the show. Let me pull the cover up. I got to go to the other one. Hold on. I have a story in, speaking of heavy metal, right? I have a story in this tribute, an anthology tribute to Black Sabbath, where a bunch of authors have gotten together and we're doing this for charity, and the funds are going to the Dio. All of y'all remember Dio, the band, to their cancer fund to help people with cancer. And so we've all gotten together and we've written some stories that are inspired by Black Sabbath songs. So on the 19th, I'm gonna have a couple of the authors on here with me. Also the editor and the brainchild behind this, JC Masick, will be on as well. So we're gonna be talking about the book. We're gonna be talking about the songs that we wrote about, what inspired them, how we came up with our stories, and also talk about some of these authors' other works, and giving them a chance to let you know some of the stuff that they have out there. Then, starting on September 26th, PPR is doing our countdown to Halloween. So each week on Southern Discomfort up to Halloween, we are going to be giving you our top 10 movies in certain categories of horror. So we're going to be giving you our top 10 vampire movies, our top 10 werewolf movies, our top 10 ghost movies, our top 10 demon movies, our top 10 slashers, and our top 10 creepy dolls. So that is all coming up on Southern Discomfort. And we're still going to be doing Immortal Shadows and covering the book of Revelation on Sundays. So that's what you can expect here over the next couple months on the channel and on the shows. So let me just check chat again, see if we had anybody.
Sorry about that. I had to tuck some little ones in. What did I miss?
Nothing. I was just going over what's coming up on the show.
Okay.
That was all. I'm going to switch back to the other background. It's not any different, but the colors are...
Yeah, PW, I was doing the same thing, trying to put my little ones to bed.
I can't scroll. I'm having technical difficulties here.
Did you tell everybody that you and I have started watching some of these video nasties?
No, I didn't. But there are some that I haven't seen yet. So Bethany and I are in the process of watching some of these. So
some of these should be banned just because they're that stupid.
Like a lot of them, really aren't good. Let's put it that way.
Yeah, it's not that. Now, some are really offensive. We will have so many trigger warnings when we talk about them. And then others, they should just be banned because they're just that stupid and hard to get into, hard to follow.
Yeah. Yep. But because I told Bethany, I said, there is no way I am going to do a show on the video nasties when I have not watched every single one of them. So there's a handful of them I have not seen. So I am watching those. We're obviously not going to cover all 72. There are some that are very popular. We're going to list them all, but like a lot of the popular ones that people have seen and are familiar with, like Evil Dead, The Burning, we'll mention those. We're not going to go into them. We're going to talk about some of the ones that are less popular and more highly offensive.
Yes.
So
some are just, oh gosh, are they awful?
yeah. Yep.
And some, oh yeah, just so offensive. One of those, oh my gosh. So yeah. But tonight, Satanic Panic, are we doing... So what exactly are we covering tonight?
We are going to look at how the Satanic Panic went after heavy metal music. So that's what we have coming up here, and we'll get into that in just a minute. Oh, Dustin is in the chat. Hey, buddy. Welcome.
He's been in the chat.
I must have missed it because I hadn't been looking at it. I've been talking. Hey, Dustin, I found this in here. I'm going to play this. Bethany and I were laughing at this.
Am the darkness in your dreams.
Dustin, what inspired that? Tell us in the chat what inspired that. Because I was scrolling through all the different videos and I saw that. I was like, what is this? I hadn't seen this yet. So that gave us a good chuckle. So I wanted to share the love. Right, the Southern Discomfort. Right, this is the only place where you can get your horror and paranormal mixed with trailer trash, humor, dad jokes, and horrible pickup lines.
What do you mean horrible pickup lines?
Oh, Do you want to hear some pickup lines before we get started?
No.
Well, you mentioned it, so
No, that doesn't mean that I want to hear it. I was just asking.
I'm going to give you some.
Please don't.
No, I am.
No, please, no. No.
Yeah.
No.
Hey, Bethany,
No. What?
are you a campfire? Because you're hot and I want s'more.
Here's what's sad. That's kind of the pickup line you used when.
No. Here is one of my favorite. On a scale of 1 to America, how free are you tonight, darling?
Oh my gosh! That just would tell me everything I would need to know about you in 5 seconds. Like,
You want another redneck one?
no, but go ahead.
I wish I was Matthew McConaughey, because girl, you are all right.
That, oh God. Some of these, it's like, the person, it just made them up, like, right off the top of their head.
My favorite one is the America one. By far.
Because that is something you would use.
Yeah, yes, it is. It most certainly is. Well, with that said, since you had me do a little aside here because you wanted to hear my great pickup lines.
No, I didn't.
Yes.
You just were so eager to display it for everybody.
Let's jump into the Satanic Panic again. So for those of you who missed the last show, you can go back and watch it. But we talked about how the panic was really started in 1980 by the book Michelle Remembers, and then that developed into the McMartin trial, where people were accused of satanic ritual abuse against children. I'm not going to mention it much because we talked about all of that in the other video, and plus I already said there's going to be no trigger warnings on this, so I'm not going to mention any of that. But you had stuff that built up to it. We talked about some of the Manson murders, some of the movies that were out in the 70s, like The Exorcist, and so you mix all that together, and then when Michelle Remembers hits and the McMartin trial comes, like it was on, and you had all of these groups start coming together, psychiatrists, law enforcement, religious groups, and it just started to take everything by storm. And the big alarm bells, right, were the McMartin trials. And with all of the accusations, and we talked about how, that trial went on for 7 years. It was one of the most expensive trials in the United States, and it ended with no prosecutions whatsoever. But that trial and the book, it brought a state of moral panic to the U.S. and also around the world. And this moral panic began to spill over into pop culture. And it spilled over into cinema, which we're going to talk about that next week. And it spilled over into board games and heavy metal music, right? We're all familiar with the board games and how Dungeons and Dragons, the simple fantasy game, was under huge attack, considered to be satanic and demonic because it was a role-playing game about wizards and casting spells. Nothing different than you see in any other fantasy movie. Nothing different that it's the same type of stuff that you see in C.S. Lewis and J.R.R. Tolkien, both who were Christians who wrote fantasy. So this should give you an idea of just the state of this panic and how everybody lost their minds, and we're not thinking about these things logically. It was like logic went out the window, and it was replaced by fear. Now, there's some things you have to remember too of why this panic caught on. The women's rights movement, and women were starting to work outside of the home. And what this meant is that you had a lot of children and teenagers being unsupervised. You had more kids in daycare. And so when this hit, and you have most of the country now, both parents working outside the home, not getting home till late, their kids are there by themselves, their younger ones are in daycare. And so when all this stuff came out about the daycares, it sent shockwaves and extreme panic throughout every home with people who had young kids in daycare throughout the United States. And it's worked their way into all kinds of different things. So that's one thing to remember. Now, the association, because we may ask, how did the association between, and remember too, the Satanism that is presented by the moral panic is not real Satanism. It's not what Satanists believe. And we've talked about Anton LaVey coming to the defense and the lawsuits and stuff like that, about how the religion that he had founded was being misrepresented by this. And so what you see with the panic was not representative of what Satanism actually believed and taught. However, there were several events that happened that the media went crazy over and started to link heavy metal music with the Satanism that was represented by the moral panic. So there are three things that I want to talk about. But before I get into this, Bethany, do you have anything you want to add?
No, I think you covered it.
Okay. Yeah, PW, I still love heavy metal music too. I still listen to it. Obviously, since I have a story in a Black Sabbath anthology. The panic began to be associated with heavy metal music because of some murders that happened. Now, and these are real. This isn't like the panic. These were real murders that happened. In the summer of 1984, a 17-year-old drug dealer and a self-professed Satanist by the name of Ricky Casso, he murdered his friends, not friends, excuse me, it was only one friend by the name of Gary Lawyers in the woods of Newport, New York. And when he committed these murders, he was high on mescaline. And according to the coroner's report, Casso allegedly stabbed his friend 36 times and sliced out his eyes, which when the media heard about this, it led to the propagation that the murders were ritualistic in nature. Two friends of Casso's, they were also present at the crime, and they witnessed it, and they told police that Casso commanded Lawyers to say you love Satan before he took his life. And Lawyers replied with, I love my mother. And then for weeks following this murder, Casso would take local teens out and show them the body and brag about it. And he told some of them that he had killed Lawyers because Satan told him to do it. And the reason he thought Satan told him to do it is because he believed that the devil had manifested to him in the form of a black crow, because when he was praying to Satan and asking if he should kill his friend, he heard the crow squawk at him. So he took that and interpreted it as Satan's approval. So when all of this happened, for months afterwards, the media presented Casso as a Satanist who was part of a cult. And this further fueled the hysteria and the panic that was already rampant through Michelle Remembers and the McMartin trial. And they made this up. They said that Casso was a part of this sect of Satanism called Knights of the Black Circle, although there was no evidence suggesting anything of the sort. And there was a press release following the incidents that was released by Suffolk County, and the police claimed that Casso regularly partook in rituals honoring the devil. And so you've got all of this stuff going on and being propagated by the media that wasn't true. And what made it worse is all of this was backed up by Casso's father, who claimed his son was obsessed with reading about witchcraft and wearing apparel featuring satanic symbols. But what sealed it and what made the media connect this to heavy metal is on the day Casso was arrested, he was wearing an AC/DC shirt. And this is what started the association of rock and roll, heavy metal music, and satanic influence, and all of this satanic panic. And so the vultures of the media, and they took this and they ran with it. And the problem is religious leaders believe them, parents believe them, and it just started to kind of slowly snowball. And all of this stuff, it was so sad because Casso would eventually off himself in prison under 48 hours later. Casso was not only an AC/DC fan, he was also Ozzy Osbourne and Judas Priest fan. And so the media found this out, and they started immediately saying that it was the heavy metal music, AC/DC, Ozzy Osbourne, Judas Priest, that made him out to commit these heinous crimes. That's one thing. The next thing is all of you remember Geraldo Rivera, right? In 1987, he released a documentary. It's 3 hours long. And I remember this as a kid. Okay, so y'all have to remember, I was a child of the 80s, like a lot of you watching are, and I grew up in the panic. I can remember seeing the Geraldo Rivera show. I remember my parents recording it and watching it and just being like, oh, holy cow. And this documentary was called Devil Worship: Exposing Satan's Underground. And you can still find it on YouTube. Now, in 1995, Rivera came out and apologized for it and for the lies and the slander and everything that was involved with it. But the damage had already been done. But in this particular documentary, it shows metalheads, right? People who like heavy metal music, that would be myself included, as blood drinking, grave robbing, sacrilegious wackos and hooligans and scum. And it went on to discuss several other murders involving young people linked with devil worship. Another murder, and Geraldo talks about this on his show, was a 14-year-old by the name of Thomas Sullivan, and he stabbed his mother to death. And he just so happened to be a Black Sabbath fan. And so, again, because he was a Black Sabbath fan, then heavy metal music must have made him do it. Now, here's the thing, right? They didn't even think to look into mental health issues, home life, anything surrounding what other things could have led to this. No, the media immediately jumps on heavy metal music. Now, on this particular broadcast, the Geraldo Rivera documentary, Ozzy Osbourne comes on that show. He appears as a guest via satellite, and they ask him about the connection between his music and the number of crimes that had been mentioned. And it's very frustrating when you go back and watch this, because Ozzy is like cut off and dismissed before he can even give a substantial defense on how this is just a bogus link to connect these two. So you can find that on YouTube. And if you really want to understand the moral panic, that is a good place to start. Later on in the 80s, there was a Christian documentary that came out in 1989 called Hell's Bells. It's a 3-hour long diatribe against heavy metal music. And it's just, you know, they start saying how AC/DC stands for Against Christ, Devil's Child. How if you flip Dio's album upside down, it reads devil. And it was just all of these bogus connections. And they were accused of subliminal messages like backmasking, all of this stuff. So you had the Geraldo Rivera, you had the Hell's Bells documentary. All of this was just feeding into this propaganda. That's really what it was. This was all propaganda that was being thrown out. Trying to think where I want to go next. Bethany, you have anything to add while I'm thinking about the next portion I want to talk about and connect with this?
No, you're covering it pretty well. That's why I'm quiet.
It bears to mention another thing I thought about in the mid 80s. I think it was 1985. There was a lawsuit against Judas Priest. 20-year-old James Vance tried to sue Judas Priest. And here's why. After a heavy night of partying and drinking, Vance and his 18-year-old friend, Raymond Belknap, after they'd been partying and drinking, they went to a local playground and tried to off themselves. Belknap died. Vance survived. And he ended up filing a lawsuit against Judas Priest, claiming that the subliminal messages within their Stained Glass album drove him to the act. So this, there was never any legal or illegal action taken. Judas Priest, they were able to avoid the responsibility. But again, this was enough for concerned parents to again make that link and demonize heavy metal music as promoting the type of Satan worship that was all over the Satanic Panic, and the subliminal messages promoting self-harm and things of that nature. Another thing. Okay, now remember, this is all starting to snowball. In 1985, after this happened with Vance, there was a committee that was formed called Parents Music Resource Center. Now, all of you who grew up in the 80s, and Beth and I were talking about this earlier, you may or may not remember Tipper Gore. Very ultra right-wing conservative. He was the one who spearheaded this. Tipper Gore is going to come into play when we talk about Twisted Sister here in just a little bit. So Tipper Gore and this Parents Music Resource Center, the PMRC, they made up a list of songs that they deemed inappropriate, called the Filthy 15. So in horror movies, you got the video nasties, and in rock, you've got the Filthy 15. And it was used to serve as a sort of a template for any type of proposed legislation regarding how albums should be rated, whether they would need extra warnings if the content was deemed inappropriate. And some of the songs on here, I want to read you some of them. They're 15, and 9 of these were metal. And I'm going to make a point here because you're going to see how stupid this is. Judas Priest, Eat Me Alive was on there. Motley Crue's Bastard. AC/DC's Let Me Put My Love Into You. Twisted Sisters, We're Not Gonna Take It. Wasp, Animal. Def Leppard's High and Dry. Merciful Fate's Into the Coven. Black Sabbath's Thrash. And Venom's Possessed. Now, think about this for a second. AC/DC. All right, this is supposed to be a thing against songs and the occult and everything. They really missed out on capitalizing this. Like, why pick this AC/DC song when you had Highway to Hell and Hell's Bells, which were way more popular than Let Me Put My Love Into You? We have to mention this too. We have to mention this. Richard Nightstalker Ramirez. How many of y'all out there remember Richard Nightstalker Ramirez? Not the carved pentagram in his palm. Bethany, you remember Ramirez?
Uh-huh.
Satanic serial killer whose murder spree terrorized the greater Los Angeles area until the summer in which this very hearing was held. So Ramirez, this is, again, media taking things and linking it. AC/DC now got linked to Ramirez and is supposedly influenced and caused Ramirez to do all of these heinous acts because of their popular song Night Prowler. It was accused of being an inspiration for Ramirez. The song is not about murder. The song is not about ritualistic murder. The song is not about Satanism. The song is about a guy who sneaks into his girlfriend's room at night when the parents are asleep for some extracurricular activities. But the scapegoat-hungry media in the 80s needed heavy metal to blame and connect, so they ended up linking this song and blaming the Ramirez murders on AC/DC, which, again, at this point, they were saying AC/DC stood for Against Christ, Devil's Child. And they milked this for all it was worth. So let's get back to the Filthy 15. I said that just to let you know AC/DC didn't go unscathed through all of this. During the Senate hearings, some of heavy metal's most controversial figures at the time appeared in court to defend heavy metal. Frank Zappa appeared. Frank Zappa comes nice and dressed up in this suit. And then you can find this on YouTube. If you go back and watch it, right, Dee Snider appears, and Dee Snider comes out looking like the dude just woke up out of bed, looking like he just stepped off of a tour bus or something like that. And everybody's thinking like, oh, what's this guy going to say? And Dee Snider gets up there, and his rebuttals are just fantastic. And it's so funny because Al Gore was involved in this as well. And it's funny to watch Al Gore just fuming at Snyder's criticism. One of the things Snyder says is he talks about the Declaration of Independence and claims that it was more violent than anything you would hear on a Twisted Sister album. And that seemed to really tick some people off. Again, I would encourage you. You can find it on YouTube, so go back and check it out. It's great. Another person, King Diamond. He is was a actual Satanist, and he was part of the Church of Satan. He is the part of Merciful Fate, and they wouldn't even give this guy, they didn't even give him the chance a day. I mean, he was already a card-carrying member of the Church of Satan, so he was immediately written off and wasn't given a fair shot to explain anything. If you look at Merciful Fate's lyrics, right, they are heavily influenced by horror films, and they are influenced by the occult, but nothing in there is anything to the links of what they were trying to be associated with these different types of murder and ritualistic abuse and things like that. And then they went after Venom. And the funny thing about Venom, like nobody took the PMRC seriously. It was just a big joke to them. And Venom was kind of making a joke like, man, you picked that song. We got a lot worse songs that you could have picked from. We're kind of insulted that you picked this one when we wrote some stuff that's, a little bit more in your face and controversial. So that was coming from Sam Dunn, who was part of the band. That was in an interview that he had done. Anyway, all of that ended up leading to the parental advisory lyrics that we see today on albums. That all was birthed out of the 80s. You also had, before I jump into, I'm switching gears. So we're going to switch gears to the PMRC and then go to MTV. But Bethany, anything you want to add about any of these murders or the connections or the bands before we jump into MTV?
No.
Nothing? All right. How many of y'all remember Headbangers Ball on MTV that used to come on at nighttime? I believe that started in 1988. Now, MTV ended up getting hounded for playing these music videos, and the PMRC came after them. They started having to show edited videos. Now, what makes all this interesting, right? So they're PMRC and these different groups are being formed, and they're coming against heavy metal. They're coming against horror. But lo and behold, Michael Jackson's Thriller ends up being one of the most popular music videos. And it was a little hypocritical because it was Michael Jackson. MTV got away with playing this video over and over and over again, simply because it was not heavy metal. Now, imagine if one of these other metal bands, all right, imagine if AC/DC, Ozzy Osbourne, Judas Priest, Merciful Fate, Venom, if they would have done a music video like Thriller, it would have been sacrifice. It would have been a scapegoat. They would have gone after it. However, because it was Michael Jackson, he was able to get away with it. Controversy goes on. MTV is trying to stay out of it. So they're like, yeah, we'll play these edited heavy metal music videos. Well, there's eventually some compromise and things like that. MTV was like, well, we'll just play the full ones late at night. They were okay with it. And then that led to the Headbangers Ball. Then I think it was, I I think it was somewhere in Virginia. They had this big petition. MTV was banned in like 1,500 homes or something like that. So I'm not, and I don't remember whatever happened with that. It's just part to show the controversy and how people were reacting to this. But while MTV was fueling this outrage by playing the Headbangers Ball and showing the uncut videos at nighttime, you also had 2020 did a documentary in the mid 80s called Devil Worshippers. And what they did in this one, I remember this one too, because we had it recorded. They documented symbols associated with the occult, included the number 666, pentagrams, inverted crosses, and all of the other sort of images that you would see on heavy metal album covers from the genre's inception. So this started, again, fueled it because this is coming on a syndicated news program that is very popular and very influential. And you've got, they went after Iron Maiden too. I meant to mention that Iron Maiden, their music video, "Can I Play with Madness?" It shows a schoolboy stumbling upon a cult, kind of something like you would see in a Hammer Studios horror film. And of course, they went after that. They went after Ozzy's Mr. Crowley, which that one is more understandable if you know anything about Aleister Crowley. So again, more and more and more attacks on heavy metal music. But when you look at the content of these heavy metal videos that people were going nuts about, it's tame. It's tame compared to what you would find in horror movies of the 80s and even mainstream horror movies of the 80s. But again, because it had been linked to all of this satanic panic and the ritualistic abuse and things of that nature, it just was in the crosshairs of the media and of parents. And so this moral panic, right? They went after heavy metal, and then they went after Dungeons and Dragons. They went after comic books as well. Like that's the thing about this moral panic, is that there was not one thing in pop culture that was not in somehow, some way connected to this, to saying that if you allow your children to watch heavy metal music, play Dungeons and Dragons, read certain comic books, watch horror movies, then they are going to get into this sensationalized version of Satanism that the media created, and they could be murdering people, right? So heavy metal, horror movies, Dungeons and Dragons, all of these things lead to demon possession and could cause you to murder your friends or go do awful things to a preschool. And it sounds bogus when we think about it now, but that was the thinking, and that's what was being pushed and propagated all during the 80s. Bethany, you got anything? I'm gonna switch gears here in just another second before we wrap up.
Nope.
No, you're supposed to back me up. I thought you had stuff. I'm giving you a chance, Blondie. Hey, Jesse James and Through the Veil crossover. Mr. Bean, welcome. Thank you all for joining us. Anything, Blondie, you want to mention about heavy metal music? Anything you remember? before I get into some personal experiences. Okay, she must be putting her kids to bed or something. So, as I said, I grew up as a child in the 80s, and the Satanic Panic was highly influential. If you read a lot of my works, my book, the Tetramet tapes that just dropped in March, that was highly influenced by the Satanic Panic. A lot of my short stories, and it's not just me. It's a lot of us authors who dabble in dark fiction, because that time period left such an imprint up on us as kids, and thinking that there was a demon behind every corner, to think that, oh, if you were listening to heavy metal music, right, it wasn't just as a stamp of rebellion like heavy metal is. All it is a stamp of rebellion, pushing against the grain, pushing against modern culture. But in the 80s, it's like the movie The Gate. If y'all never seen the movie The Gate from 1987 with Steven Dorff as a kid, where he and his buddy take a heavy metal album and read the lyrics off of it and literally open a gate to hell in their backyard. This is kind of, as kids, what we thought would actually happen. I can remember during the panic, a lot of conservative religious movements were born. I mentioned the Hell's Bells documentary that was shown ad nauseum at youth camps that I went to over the summer. But there was also this guy who was extremely popular in the 80s amongst conservative Christians and people who were religious groups that were highly involved in the panic. And that guy's name was Bob Larson. You can look him up. He was eventually found out to be a fraud. But Bob Larson had this radio show called Talkback. And I can remember listening to it as a kid and thinking it was all real. Like, he would have people come on the show who were supposedly demon possessed, and they would be talking in the voices like Dustin does when he does his videos. And he would have this big elaborate exorcism over the phone. This dude's, on the phone with people casting demons out. And I remember as a kid thinking, like, this is one of the coolest things that I have ever heard in my life. Now, there was this huge propaganda on the radio show that Bob Larson had developed. Is at a point, one of his quote unquote listeners was abducted by a satanic cult. And she was supposed to be sacrificed on Halloween. And they were pushing this on the radio show and like, oh, so-and-so, she's been abducted by this cult. We've got to find her. We've got to pray for her. We've got to, make sure that she's safe. We got to get law enforcement involved and all of this stuff. And she would call in on the show and she would be like saying she's hunkered in a corner right now and she's crying, and Bob's like, are you okay? What did they do to you? And she's like saying some stuff that happened and how she's still okay. And, she's saying how she needs help or they're going to sacrifice her on Halloween. And I'm listening to this as a young kid. And I'm like, holy crap, they're going to kill this lady. They're going to sacrifice her to Satan. And so taking all that in, it's no wonder I write horror because this was such a huge influence on me growing up. And I'm, all the horrible things that came out of the panic, and as awful as it was, at least one of the good things is that it raised up a whole bunch of different movie makers and horror authors who were impacted by this, positive and negative ways. And they're writing stories, they're writing books and making movies. And I remember Bob Larson came to Baton Rouge. to a fairly large Baptist church there. And they were pushing it because there was this satanic group that was supposed to come, and they were going to try to stop Bob from preaching, and they were going to beat him up, and they were going to, all of this stuff is being talked about on the show. So he gets there. All right. And we're all watching, and I'm up in the balcony with my family. We had several friends with us, and we're watching, and Bob Larson comes and he starts preaching. And as soon as he gets into the sermon, impeccable timing, lo and behold, here comes the satanic cult members marching down the aisle, and they sit right in the front row. And they're dressed in all black. They dress like how I dress now, and they got long hair and piercings and everything like that. Hey, Chris, I see you on Facebook over there, my man. Thank you for watching Through the Veil. Congratulations on the book too. So I'm sitting here watching this satanic cult, comes in, and I'm like watching with anticipation, like, are they going to go up there and try to take Bob Larson down? But he had like some security guards there, and like they're like heckling him and saying all kinds of things. And they're like, "Hail Satan," and all of this different stuff, and putting on a big show. And at the end, nothing happened. Bob Larson preaches. The satanic cult doesn't do anything. There were no exorcisms, right? On some of the things that Bob does and some of his events that were recorded, there were fake exorcisms and stuff like that. And I'm not going to lie, as a kid, and after that, I was so disappointed that the Satanists didn't go after him, or that there was no exorcism. I remember leaving so disappointed and being like, well, that was a load of crap. That was a waste of time. Like, there were no exorcism. The satanic cult didn't really do anything other than, just heckle him just a little bit. So I was really disappointed, but that didn't stop me from listening to Bob Larson. But as I grew older and, a teenager, and started looking at this and studying this, and looking more into Bob Larson, it became so evidently clear that this dude was a phony, and he was eventually busted as such, which, as a Christian and as a minister, that really angers me nowadays, that people use the gospel for propaganda, that the fakeness, and using it for show and money or whatever to push their on agenda. So while it influenced me as a horror author, there's a different part of me that looks back at that and is extremely angry that someone would defile the name, the holy and precious and beautiful name of Jesus in the glorious, beautiful gospel, and use it for something so underhanded. Like, it's making me mad right now just thinking about it. And so there's part of me that, I have this love-hate relationship with the Satanic Panic, because it influenced me as a horror author, but just the way that heavy metal bands were treated. Michelle remembers all these other lives that were ruined, the way Christianity treated people and was done, and how the gospel was used as propaganda and as something to jump on, and so that these ministries could make money and run with it. It angers me. It still angers me to this day. So I have very mixed emotions when it comes to something like the Satanic Panic. So that, my friends, is just a little bit of the background of how the Satanic Panic got linked with heavy metal music. Next week, we're going to look at how the Panic went overseas and was viewed in the UK, and how the UK came up with the list of the video nasties. So I am really looking forward to next week's subject matter. I've always wanted to do a show on the video nasties, and this was the perfect time to do it. So I am really, really excited about what we're going to be talking about next week. I'm sorry I talk so much, Blondie. Hey, yeah, Through the Veil, I did. I see some pea soup, right? I was hoping for something, man. I wanted to see somebody fall on the ground and writhe and scream and cuss and yell and everything like that. But nothing to that extent happened. Yes, Through the Veil, video nasties. The Video Nasty, they were a list of 72 movies that were banned in the UK, and several of these were taken to trial and prosecuted, and some of them still to this day have not received a full release in the UK or Australia. So we're going to get into those next week. I'm going to give you a list of all 72 movies. Several of them you will be familiar with, and we're not going to spend time on the popular ones. I want to bring to light some of the ones that have not been watched a lot and are not as popular, but that I think are more would be considered highly offensive than some of the main ones on that list, like Evil Dead and The Burning, and some more popular ones. I'm not going to give it all away, but we're going to be looking at the video nasties coming next week. Mondo Cane is not on the video nasties list, but it is stuff along that nature. If you've heard of Faces of Death, Faces of Death is one of those supposedly what we would call nowadays a mockumentary. And so Faces of Death would be something along the lines of Mondo Cane that is on that particular list there. And we'll that's one of the more popular ones, which if you have Shudder, Faces of Death is on there. And in a lot of these video nasties, if you live in the US, you can find almost all of them to watch if you're interested in seeing it. And you can go back and watch and look and question, why was this banned? And that's what Bethany and I do when we go back and watch them, is look at it and say, okay, why was this particular movie banned? What in this movie was so offensive that they felt like it needed to be banned? Now, a lot of these movies were straight to VHS releases, because that was kind of the big thing in the day, because the MPAA, and I'm giving you all this now just to prepare you for next week. The MPAA in the 80s really cracked down on horror movies, as you can understand, with the Panic. They butchered the Friday the 13th movies. You watch interviews with Tom Savini, who did a lot of the makeup effects for the Friday the 13th movies. He's really frustrated and agitated that he spent all of this work on special effects only to have them cut and not be allowed in the final releases. And the thing that's frustrating about the Friday the 13th movies is that all of that footage, the reason that you have never seen released, except for the first one, the reason you've never seen released a Friday the 13th, any of the sequels, in an uncut version, is because all of that film was messed up and lost. So we will never get to see the Friday the 13th uncut with the special effects in the way that Tom Savini had originally wanted them. And as somebody who is into film, that is very frustrating and disappointing. But the MPAA cracks down on horror movies in the 80s, and so a lot of them, in order to bypass the MPAA and be able to have the stuff that they wanted, in there, they went straight to VHS release. And so a lot of these VHS releases were banned overseas and in the UK, but not so much here in the States, because I can remember as a kid going into the video store and seeing Evil Dead, seeing The Burning, seeing Last House on the Left, seeing I Spit on Your Grave, seeing all those VHS tapes there, which by that time they were already banned overseas. So we will be getting into the video nasties for next week. Sunday night, I will be back. We are getting into Revelation. We're going to continue our study. We will be in Revelation 16. We're going to look a little bit at 15 because it's a very short chapter, and then jump into 16. And we're going to set the stage for getting into the 7 bowls of God's judgments. And we're going to talk about the 7 bowls eventually. Not sure how many shows that's going to take. I know when we did the seals and the trumpets in the past, it took a couple shows to get through them. So I'm probably planning on at least 2 shows on Revelation 15 and 16 about the bowl judgments. So we'll be doing that Sunday night at 8 o'clock. So come join us for there if you are around. Through the Veil, Faces of Death is on YouTube as well. Now, Faces of Death, they released a bunch of sequels. I would like to find the sequels, and then they had a bunch of knockoffs like Traces of Death and different things of that nature. I can remember going through the video store and renting absolutely every single one of them because, you know, as a teenager, I thought they were real. I thought you were seeing real things. Come to find out, right? Found out years later it was all fake. Very disappointing. But yeah, I know some of the Faces of Death are not worth seeing because all they are is like a compilation of the first 2 movies. But I would like to see if I can find some of the latter ones and watch them, because I haven't seen. I think there were a total of 6 Faces of Death. The only one that I have watched in recent years, and I just watched it a few weeks ago when it was released on Shudder. The first one, I haven't seen 2 through 6 since I was in high school. So I want to try to find those and go back and watch them just to remember what they were about and how everything was laid out, and which ones were, you know, more of the compilation of taking from the other 2 movies and just putting it the best scenes of all of it together. So I will go on a search for those. And if anybody can find a place to watch and get Faces of Death 2 through 6, please let me know. You can email me at my name, EzekielKincaid@gmail.com. So let me know. I'd like to be able to find those. But that is all I have for you tonight. Satanic Panic and heavy metal music. We will be back Sunday with Immortal Shadows and Revelation. And then next week, we will pick up on the video nasties. I'm not sure what happened to Bethany. Either she is working and getting the kids down, and or her internet's acting up. So Through the Veil, YouTube. I haven't checked YouTube in a hot minute for them. You found some of the other Faces of Death on YouTube? Is that what you're saying? I'll let you answer before I close out the show because I want to know. Or were you responding to PW about the first one? Okay. All right. Yeah, they're on YouTube. Okay. I'll check those out. Before we close out, just wanted to remind everybody because this is going to drop before Sunday, before I'm back on. But September 7th, we have a double issue of Southern Discomfort, my series, my short story series that I do for Godless. This one includes 2 stories that are all Old West themes by me and another up-and-coming horror author by Rebecca Evanesky. My story is Brothel. That is about a skinwalker. And her story is The Lily Rose, which is about a mimic. Mine is basically kind of the feel of a Tales from the Crypt episode. It's got some dark humor, extremely violent, a good twist. And Rebecca's The Lily Rose, you really get some atmosphere and some depth of character in that one, with a very brutal ending. So 2 very different style stories that complement each other well. A lot of times I do like, especially with my novels, doing a lot of character depths, but sometimes I just want to write a fun story. And that's kind of what Brothel is, but she complements it in giving a story in this issue that has some good depths of character in her. So that is dropping on Godless September 7th. It's Saturday, I believe. And I had mentioned my book, The Tetramet Tapes, that was inspired by this Satanic Panic. You can get it here from me. I have some paperback copies if you want a signed copy. You can also get it you can get an ebook of it on Godless, or the ebook and paperback on Amazon. This book is about a group of 12-year-old boys who find some VHS tapes in the trash can of their creepy neighbor, who is a mean old man. Takes place in 1990. And they begin to watch what is on the tapes, and it begins to kind of affirm their suspicion of some of the occult urban legends that are going around in the town. So the boys go out to investigate where these tapes were filmed. And because it is a horror novel, you can imagine that it does not go well. So that is available on Amazon and Godless. I think that is all the announcements I had. I don't know if Dustin is still with us. I wanted to see, Dustin, if you had anything before I play the outro music. You got anything, buddy? Wait for Dustin to respond. All right. All right. I guess Dustin is tied up right now, but I'll be back Sunday. If Dustin has any announcements, we can talk about it then. A big thank you for everybody for coming and hanging out with us tonight and talking about the Satanic Panic and this particular topic. We love you. We appreciate the support that you give this channel, and we'll continue to put out good content week after week for your enjoyment. We will be back Sunday night. Until then, hope you guys have a blessed week, and stick around for our inspirational video. Love y'all.
Is this what giving up feels like? I don't know. Tell me, have I lost my mind? nowhere to go, so far from home. Is this what giving up feels like? I don't know, I don't know. Tell me, have I lost my mind? So I break these walls and hold my